You feel a weight on your chest. It's not physical, it's something denser, deeper, as if an anchor were pulling you inward. You say it's fatigue, that maybe you slept poorly, that it's work stress. But deep down, you know it's not just that. Maybe you wake up in the middle of the night with your heart racing, your breath shallow, a strange chill in your body, and you think, it was just a nightmare. But it doesn't go away. The fear remains, the confusion remains, and worse, that feeling begins to reappear for no apparent reason. In the middle of the day, on the bus, in a line, in the middle of a conversation. You ignore, grab your phone, scroll through the screen, pretend everything's fine, but there is something inside you that shout, silently, and you feel, even without understanding, that if you continue to ignore this, one day you will break. It will crash, it will collapse, and the cruelest part, nobody notices. You work, deliver, post, respond, pretend. On the outside, everything looks fine, but on the inside, it's like you're walking on shards. You know something is wrong, but you can't put your finger on it. And all you wanted, deep down, was to understand, have clarity, stop feeling lost in your own body. Now listen carefully. Anxiety does not appear by chance. It's an internal alarm, an alert system that your body and your psyche have created to warn you. There's something deeply misaligned in here, and the more you ignore this sign, the louder it screams. Jordan Peterson says that chaos begins when you lie to yourself, and lying to yourself in this context is waking up with a rapid heartbeat and saying, it's just coffee. It's feeling tight in your chest and thinking it's just traffic. It's losing all sense of everything and thinking it's just a phase. Ignoring this signal is like hearing a fire alarm and saying it's just the wind. The problem with living like this is that you normalize the pain. You adapt to the suffocation. You learn to function amidst despair. And when something inside you cries out for help, you shut it up. And that is the biggest mistake, because ignoring this sign of anxiety doesn't make you strong. It makes you blind. And those who live blind within themselves walk towards destruction without even realizing it. See, it's not weakness to listen to your body. It is not weakness to feel fear. Weakness is refusing to see what is eating you up inside. You're not in a bad mood by chance. You're sick because something is trying to wake you up. Something is saying, hey, this life you're leading, it's not right. This way you treat yourself, it's not right. This silence, this escape, this excess, it's all slowly killing you. And anxiety, the one you try to silence, is your soul's last resort to bring you back to yourself. She's brutal, but she's true. It hurts, but it shows. She seems like an enemy, but she's a desperate ally trying to prevent their destruction. And if you keep ignoring that sign, you'll stay lost, confused, adrift, until some part of you, mind, body, or spirit, simply collapses. Now it's up to you. Or you listen to that internal alarm and start doing what needs to be done, or the noise will increase, and it won't stop. Have you ever wondered why anxiety insists on appearing just when you're trying to move on with life? As if, in moments when you should be fine, something inside you just freezes, as if there's an invisible obstacle preventing you from moving forward? Jordan Peterson states that anxiety is the guardian of the gate between chaos and order. In other words, it's not a mistake. It's a frontier. When anxiety arises, it's not trying to destroy you. It's trying to say, you are living outside the order your soul needs. Think about it. Your body, your mind, and your history have a structure. When you betray that structure, living dishonestly with yourself, running away from responsibilities, avoiding decisions that should be made, anxiety rears its ugly head, symbolic scream. She is a warning saying, you cannot continue on this path without paying a heavy price. And what is that price? It's your peace. It's your mental clarity. It is your inner integrity. The modern world has taught us that anxiety is an enemy to be silenced. But Peterson would say, she is a messenger, a profound warning that your soul is suffocating under the weight of lies, escape, and paralysis. When you feel that inner uneasiness, that unexplained butterflies in your stomach, that tightness in your chest that no one sees, it's not just a chemical disorder. It's a psychological and existential sign. Something in your psychic structure is out of place. And most dangerously, If you continue to ignore this signal, the chaos is likely to increase, because, according to Peterson, what is avoided in the inner world becomes tyranny in the outer world. In other words, what you don't face within yourself begins to destroy everything around you. Relationships start to crumble. The routine begins to collapse. Decisions become impossible. The soul gets tired, and you start to believe you're broken, when in fact, you're just disconnected from your inner order. Anxiety comes as a warning. Someone in here is begging to be heard. Maybe it's your inner child, abandoned for years. Maybe it's the part of you that's tired of pleasing the whole world and forgetting about yourself. Maybe it's the courageous side that desperately wants to break out of inertia and take control of one's own life. And you keep covering your ears. Peterson always emphasizes, you are not made to live a lie, and anxiety is the first witness to your omission. If you feel constant anxiety, it may not be a disorder. Maybe it is an urgent request for realignment. And this realignment begins with a sincere question. Where exactly am I betraying the truth about myself? What responsibilities am I avoiding? What part of me is begging for order, and I'm neglecting it? When you answer these questions with brutal honesty, something starts to change. It's not that anxiety disappears overnight, but she begins to fulfill her mission, bring you back to the axis. After all, anxiety doesn't want to hold you back. She wants to free you from the chaos you created for yourself. But to do that, you need to stop treating her like an enemy and start listening to it like one of the most sincere voices you have. Most people who suffer from anxiety don't even realize they're suffering. They simply adapt. They create routines around escape. They build identities on top of the unnamed pain, and they live as if surviving on an invisible battlefield. But anxiety leaves signs, always. And some of these signs are so common and so ignored that they end up becoming part of everyday life without anyone realizing the risk. Jordan Peterson warns that the worst pain is the one that becomes a habit, and when you normalize suffering, you stop fighting for healing. Today, I want to show you 3 of the most ignored signs of anxiety, which could be dragging you into a state of silent destruction. 1. The silent agony of waking up. You open your eyes, and in the first seconds of the day, something inside you already weighs heavily. Even before you get out of bed, your body is on high alert. It's as if the world is already starting to go wrong. You feel a suffocating sensation, as if there's an urge to escape, but without knowing from what. And then you pick up your phone. You go on social media. You start consuming information that doesn't matter, all to avoid facing that void. But that feeling is not random. It's the first scream of the day from your psyche saying something is deeply out of alignment in your life. 2. Mental numbness in front of the screen. You sit down to work, study, or even rest, and feel like you can't connect with anything. Your mind can't focus. Your body seems present, but your soul doesn't. It's as if you're dissociated from your own existence, an emotional zombie, a spectator of your own life. And the worst part, you think it's just fatigue, or that you need more coffee. But no, that's it. A symptom of emotional overload and lack of direction. The mind is screaming for meaning, but you respond with more stimuli, more videos, more notifications, more tasks. Peterson would explain it this way. When the soul loses its meaning, the body goes into survival mode. And that's exactly what's happening. 3. Extreme irritability over small things. You drop a glass, and it explodes. Someone interrupts you, and you feel angry. A silly comment on the internet, and your heart races. These disproportionate reactions do not mean that you are explosive. They mean you're exhausted. Anxiety, when left unaddressed, builds tension within the body. It's like a balloon slowly inflating. Eventually, it bursts, and the trigger may be something trivial, but the burden behind it is immense. Each of these signs is a symbol, a part of your soul begging to be heard. These symptoms are not minor annoyances. They are disguised screams, and the more you ignore them, the more anxiety has to escalate to try to wake you up. You need to understand this. Anxiety is not random. It is symbolic. Every sensation has a purpose. Every discomfort has a meaning. And if you continue to treat these symptoms as nonsense, you will end up numbing the only thing that could save you, the deep listening of your own soul. If this resonates with you in any way, please subscribe and like. This will help this video reach someone who might be desperate right now, and you'll have been a part of that. Now that you have seen these 3 signs, answer honestly. How many of them are present in your daily life? Which one have you been ignoring for too long? And how long will you keep calling this routine? We live in an age where feeling is practically a crime, where stopping to reflect is seen as a waste of time, where pain needs to be hidden, and doubt needs to be disguised with ready-made phrases and automatic smiles. Modern culture, global, fast-paced, and superficial, teaches us that any sign of fragility needs to be erased immediately. Don't feel bad. Don't stop. Don't cry. Don't overthink. Keep going. Produce. Post. Earn. But there is a very high price for this, and this price is often called chronic anxiety. Jordan Peterson asserts that human beings need inner silence to order themselves, and that's precisely what's being stolen from us. The ability to listen to our own minds, to perceive the signals of our souls, to sit in silence and ask, "What's hurting me?" All of this is being drowned out by a tsunami of stimulus. Do you feel something strange? Turn on the TV. Having an existential crisis? Open Instagram. Feeling an inexplicable emptiness? Go shopping. Pain has become our enemy, and everything around us seems to conspire to make us don't overthink, because if we think, we will face what we have avoided for years. But here's the brutal truth. Running away from your own mind is a type of emotional suicide, and anxiety is often your body's last resort to stop you from destroying yourself in this escape. Imagine a house on fire, and the alarm goes off. What does modern culture do? Ask for silence. He says the alarm is annoying. It tells you to turn off that noise with medicine, a movie, a motivational post, and you do it. Turn off the alarm, but the fire is still there. Peterson reminds us that order only emerges when we willingly confront chaos, and this requires introspection. It requires stopping, listening, feeling, asking courageously, "At what point in my life did I lose myself?" Today's culture doesn't want you to do this, because if you stop and think about it, you might realize you're in a job you hate, in a relationship that drains you, in a cycle of distractions that disconnect you, in a routine that crushes you, and then the system collapses. Therefore, listening to your mind and respecting its signals is a revolutionary act. It's like saying to the world, "I'm not going to keep quiet on the inside just to look good on the outside." Anxiety is proof that you are still trying to survive in this environment that anesthetizes you. It is a symptom that something inside you still resists the lie, that something still screams for truth, for pause, by reconstruction. The problem is that many hear this cry, and instead of accepting it, they blame themselves. They think they are weak. They think they are weak for needing to stop, but they are not. Real weakness, Peterson would say, is when you abandon yourself just to continue pleasing the chaos around you. You were not made to live on autopilot. You were not born to be a machine. You are a symbolic being, deep, loaded with meaning. And anxiety, as brutal as it may seem, is just a request for reconnection with that depth. So the next time you feel something is wrong, don't be silent. Don't hide it. Don't run away. Perhaps that is exactly where your true path to healing begins. Have you ever noticed that even when everything inside you tells you that something is wrong, you still insist on saying that everything is fine? Your chest feels tight, sleepless nights, the emptiness growing in the middle of the day, but you respond to others with, "I'm just tired, it'll pass." Why do we do this? Jordan Peterson would say, the reason is simple and brutal. Facing the signs of anxiety requires courage, and courage is a choice few are willing to make. Because listening to anxiety often means having to change, having to review decisions, review paths, break patterns, and it all hurts. Therefore, many prefer to deceive themselves rather than face the truth. They prefer the comfort of a suffocating routine to the liberating discomfort of reconstruction. The truth is that we ignore the sign of anxiety because we have fear of what it reveals. Fear of discovering that we are in a relationship that no longer makes sense. Fear of admitting that we hate our job, our routine, our lifestyle. Fear of realizing we have unresolved traumas, open wounds, parts of ourselves that have been forgotten, abandoned. So we silence ourselves, we numb ourselves, we mask it with forced laughter, social media, excessive tasks, alcohol, food, distraction, anything that prevents us from confronting our inner mirror. But there is a very serious problem with this. What you avoid grows. Peterson is clear about this. Everything you don't face becomes the dragon that will devour your peace. And this dragon, which starts small as discomfort, feeds on your denial. Every time you say, "It's okay," when it's not, it grows. Every time you avoid silence, fear grows stronger. Every time you run away from yourself, chaos organizes against you. And there comes a point where the body can't take it anymore. The mind collapses. Emotions collapse. Crises appear. And then you say, "I don't know where it came from." But it came from afar. It came from years of ignoring the signs. It came from a silent pact with the lie that feeling is weakness. The cold, hard truth is that anxiety is not the problem. The problem is the refusal to listen to it. And why do we refuse? Because we learn that vulnerability is shame. Because we were taught to endure everything in silence. Because we believe that if we show our pain, no one will love us. No one will understand. No one will stay. So we go on alone, suffering inside, pretending on the outside. And this, more than anxiety itself, is what destroys us. Ignoring the signs of anxiety is like covering your ears while your house collapses. You may not hear the noise, but the collapse is still happening. Human beings are not destroyed by weakness. They are destroyed by denial of the truth. This is one of Peterson's central ideas. And the truth, however harsh, is the only chance for real healing. So today you need to answer with radical honesty. What exactly have you been avoiding? What do you know you need to change but pretend you don't see? And how much longer will you keep up this farce? Because anxiety is just the messenger. What's killing you is the silence you've imposed on the truth. A life without direction is fertile ground for anxiety. When you don't know where to go, every step feels heavy. Every choice seems dangerous. Every silence becomes deafening. And the body, unable to cope with this lack of direction, begins to scream. This scream is anxiety. Jordan Peterson constantly repeats that life without purpose becomes unbearable, and anxiety is often a symptom of this unbearability. When there is no internal order guiding you, chaos takes over, and chaos is unforgiving. But what happens in practice when someone insists on living without direction? Let's break it down. 1. Small tasks become mountains. What should be simple, replying to a text, paying a bill, making the bed, starts to seem impossible. You feel paralyzed, and each postponed task increases the feeling of failure. It's as if the world is getting heavier and heavier, and you're increasingly unable to carry it. 2. Relationships become invisible wars. Without inner direction, you also lose your connections. Anxiety makes you reactive, needy, and defensive. Small remarks become insults. Silence becomes rejection. Presence becomes demands. And what could be a welcoming space becomes a battlefield. Little by little, you push away those you most wanted to be close to. 3. The body begins to charge insomnia, gastritis, muscle pain, tachycardia. The body carries the burden of what the soul avoids. Ignoring anxiety inevitably means overloading biology. The organism enters a survival mode, and life becomes just that, surviving, not living. 4. The silent soul. This is perhaps the most dangerous point. When you live without direction, your soul begins to lose its voice. You no longer know what you want. You no longer know what you feel. You no longer know what you dream. And there comes a time when you look in the mirror and no longer recognize who's there. When a man doesn't know where he's going, any place seems good, but all places become unbearable. A reflection that echoes Peterson. This is the price of ignoring anxiety. It's not just an isolated crisis. It's an entire life degrading in silence. It's the gradual distancing of what makes existence worthwhile. Meaning. You need to understand this. Anxiety doesn't destroy on its own. It destroys when ignored. What you call a crisis is actually the accumulation of months, sometimes years, of denial. And there comes a point where this denial becomes unbearable. When you reach the point of exhaustion, when you can no longer pretend to anyone, not even yourself. And then comes the breakdown. This breakdown can be physical, emotional, or spiritual. It can manifest as burnout, depression, addiction, or withdrawal. But in all cases, the root cause is the same: life without direction, soul without order, mind without truth. And here's the call: you can no longer afford to live without direction. You can no longer leave your life to chance. You can no longer anesthetize what should be heard. If this statement resonates with you, subscribe and like it. This way, this video will reach those who are about to break down, and you'll be part of this wave of support. You must choose. Either you continue to ignore it and accept the price of destruction, or start building a direction today, no matter how small, because without direction, life becomes a prison. But with direction, even in the midst of fear, anxiety ceases to be an enemy and becomes a guide. Most people spend years, sometimes decades, trying to silence their anxiety, taking medication without proper supervision, immersing themselves in distractions, accumulating commitments so they don't have time to think. But there comes a point when life takes its toll. The body takes its toll. The soul takes its toll. And the question arises, what happens when I finally stop running away and start listening to the anxiety? Jordan Peterson answers simply and brutally. The first reaction is fear, but soon after, relief comes. Yes, relief. Because for the first time, you stop fighting yourself. For the first time, the energy that was previously spent trying to silence the symptom begins to be used to understand it. And when this happens, 3 transformative movements begin. 1. You discover that anxiety was not the end, but the beginning. Anxiety, in fact, was never your enemy. It was the alarm, the warning, the signal that you needed to change course. When you listen, you realize it didn't come to destroy you, but to summon you. The weight that seemed unbearable begins to transform into a compass. 2. You realize that fear was a messenger, not a sentence. The racing heart, the cold sweat, the alert mind, all of this that felt like punishment was actually communication. The body was trying to warn, there's something here that needs to be looked at. You can't ignore it any longer. When you embrace fear, it loses its power to paralyze you and transforms into energy for action. 3. You begin to rebuild order in the midst of chaos. Peterson teaches that life requires a balance between order and chaos, and anxiety is precisely the symptom that internal chaos has surpassed its limit. By listening to the signal, you make room to restore order. Small routines begin to be respected. Tasks previously postponed are completed, and little by little, you experience clarity where before there was only confusion. But be careful. This process isn't magical, nor is it instantaneous. It hurts. It demands responsibility. It demands admitting mistakes, rethinking choices, and confronting trauma. It demands looking within with an honesty you may never have practiced. So when you finally hear the signal of anxiety, the first feeling is shock, as if you've spent years running from a truth that was there, always in front of you. And the truth liberates, but it also weighs. This is where many give up. They think their anxiety has gotten worse, when in fact it's just revealed itself. It's like turning on a light in a messy room. You didn't mess it up at that moment. You just saw what was already there. And this is the invitation. Don't turn off the light just because the mess scares you. Keep looking, keep cleaning, keep rearranging. Anxiety, when listened to, becomes a guide. It points you to where you need to act. It shows you which parts of your life need adjustment. It reveals which relationships are draining your energy. It exposes which choices are taking you away from what is true. Peterson would say, inner chaos only becomes orderly when you decide to face your own shadow. Listening to anxiety is this: facing your shadow. And when you do, something extraordinary happens. You discover you're not broken. You were just lost. What seemed like a sentence of destruction becomes called reconstruction. And for the first time in a long time, you begin to feel hope. Not the naive hope that everything will resolve itself, but the solid hope of someone who knows, if I have the courage to listen, I can change. Many people spend years in therapy, consume tons of self-help books, and watch endless videos, but remain stuck in the same cycle: anxiety, avoidance, guilt, repetition. Why? because no one taught them how to ask the right questions. Jordan Peterson insists, clarity begins when you ask the right question. A life changes when a profound question is asked with brutal honesty. Magical answers don't save you. They're powerful questions. They're the ones that act as mirrors, tearing away the mask and forcing you to look within. Today, I want to share with you 3 questions that can be a game changer. If answered honestly, they can begin to transform your relationship with anxiety, not as an enemy, but as a guide. Question 1, what exactly is making me suffer? It seems obvious, but it isn't. Most people keep saying, I'm anxious, but they don't name the cause. They say, I'm feeling bad, but they don't elaborate. And until the problem is named, it continues to grow in the shadows. Peterson explains, what is not named becomes a monster. What is named can be confronted. So, sit down with a pen and paper. Write without filter. List everything: work, relationships, body, routine, choices, silence, traumas. Be specific. Don't just say, I'm overwhelmed. Say, I'm overwhelmed because I avoid talking to my boss about X. Or, I'm overwhelmed because I'm in a relationship that's destroying me. Clarity begins when you dare to put on paper what your mind tries to hide. Question 2, what have I been avoiding for months? Anxiety is often the accumulation of postponed decisions. You know what needs to be done, but you don't do it. You know the conversation you need to have, but you avoid it. You know the change you need to make, but you put it off. And each day of postponement fuels the anxiety. This question is a brutal key. It cuts to the heart of the matter. Maybe you avoid looking at your finances. Maybe you avoid ending a relationship. Maybe you avoid facing a medical exam. Maybe you avoid publicly admitting who you really are. It doesn't matter what it is. The simple act of acknowledging what you're avoiding already reduces some of the anxiety, because suddenly, the monster has a name. Question 3, what do I need to do now even if it hurts? This is the scariest question, because it calls for action. Anxiety loses its power when you act, not when you think, not when you wait, not when you make excuses, but when you act. Peterson always reinforces, the meaning of life is in the weight you choose to carry voluntarily. And this question points to that very burden. What do you need to do today, not tomorrow? What's the smallest, most concrete task you can take on right now? It could be tidying your room. It could be making an appointment. It could be sending a difficult message. It could be starting to walk 15 minutes a day. What matters isn't the size of the action, but the decision to act. These 3 questions are like lamps that illuminate the darkness of the mind. But be careful. They only work if you have the courage to answer them without a mask, without self-deception, without excuses. Anxiety, when heard, always points to a responsibility you've been avoiding. These questions don't immediately eliminate the pain, but they do something much more important. They give you back direction. And direction is exactly what anxiety was trying to give you all along. So far, we've talked about signs, diagnoses, and deep reflections. But the truth is, if you don't turn all of this into practical action, anxiety will continue to find ways to grow. Jordan Peterson insists, it's not enough to understand. You need to act. Understanding only gains value when it turns into action. That's why this chapter is a simple guide, not to solve your entire life at once, but to start the process. Because the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step, and anxiety only weakens when you show it that you're not going to stand still any longer. Step 1, write down your daily triggers. Get a notebook dedicated to this. Whenever you feel anxious, write down, where were you? Who were you with? What were you thinking at that moment? What happened immediately before the symptom? This exercise is powerful because anxiety, without recording, seems like a random monster. But when you write it down, you begin to notice patterns. And where there is a pattern, there is the possibility of intervention. Step 2, choose a small task you've been putting off. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be tidying your desk, answering an email, paying an overdue bill, or even washing the dishes. The idea is simple. Anxiety thrives on procrastination. Every small action completed tells your brain that you're no longer running away. Peterson reinforces this when he says, if you can't get your whole life in order, start by tidying your room. This phrase isn't about cleanliness, but about symbolism. Tidying your room is actually tidying your mind. Step 3. Respect your routine as if it were your life, because it is established fixed times for waking up, eating, and sleeping. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it does need to be consistent. Anxiety thrives on chaos, and a routine, however simple, is like a symbolic antidote to internal collapse. When you organize yourself even minimally, you send a message to your psyche. There is order, there is care, there is direction. Step 4. Gradual exposure to what you fear. If there's something you've been avoiding, a conversation, a place, a decision, don't try to solve it all at once. Take it step by step. If you're afraid of public speaking, start by speaking in front of a mirror, then with a friend, then in a small group. If you're afraid of standing in line, go with someone else first. Each micro-exposure diminishes the power of fear. Step 5. Conscious breathing in times of crisis. When anxiety reaches intense levels, go back to basics. Breathe. Inhale deeply through your nose for 4 seconds, hold for 4, and exhale through your mouth for 6. Repeat. It may seem like a small amount, but it regulates your nervous system and restores clarity. These actions aren't miracles, but they are seeds. If you do this for a week, you'll already notice a difference. If you do it for a month, your mind will begin to understand that you're regaining control. And if you do it for a year, your life will never be the same. The mistake is believing you need to do something grand. You don't. You just need to get started. Chaos recedes when you take a step toward order. Jordan Peterson. If this resonated with you, subscribe and like. This is how we spread comfort and clarity to those who are struggling silently. Remember, the solution isn't to wait for anxiety to disappear on its own. The solution is to show it every day that you're not going to run away anymore. We've reached the crucial point. You've seen the signs of anxiety, understood what they mean, realized why you ignore them, and discovered the price of living without direction. But now you face an inevitable choice: continue running away or take responsibility. Jordan Peterson constantly repeats that life gains meaning when you willingly carry the heaviest burden you can bear. And that's exactly what anxiety is asking you to do. Stop running away and start carrying the weight of your own life. Anxiety is not your enemy. It's not trying to destroy you. It's a call for you to stop destroying yourself. It's a warning from your soul, a desperate plea for you to break free from inertia, face your fears, organize your life, and take responsibility. The danger of ignoring. If you continue to ignore the signs, the destruction won't be immediate. It will be slow, gradual, silent. One day you'll realize you've lost important relationships, that your body is failing, that your mind is exhausted, and that time has passed without you having truly lived. This is the path of those who refuse to listen. It is a path of ruin, where the soul crumbles in silence. The power to assume. But there is another way, the way of listening, of looking in the mirror and saying, I will no longer run away from myself. This is the moment when you stop treating yourself like a victim and start treating yourself like an agent of your own life. Responsibility is not a destructive burden. It is a liberating burden. When you say, I am the one who needs to change, I am the one who needs to act, I am the one who needs to choose, anxiety stops being a ghost and becomes strength. Redefining anxiety. From now on, you can look at anxiety differently, not as an enemy, but as a teacher, not as a condemnation, but as a compass, not as a sentence, but as a calling. It won't disappear completely, but it will change tone. It will stop being despair and become alert. It will stop being a burden and become direction. You have to decide, keep running or start rebuilding. Jordan Peterson. A pact with the truth. True healing begins when you make a pact with truth, when you stop making excuses, justifying procrastination, and denying symptoms. When you look within with brutal honesty and say, I'm here, I won't hide anymore. This is the moment when anxiety stops being a monster and becomes a partner, not because it's pleasant, but because it becomes useful. It shows where the disorder lies. It points out what needs to be addressed. It reveals who you really are. Final call. So today, right now, you have a clear choice. Continue to deny it, until the point where your life becomes unbearable. Or take responsibility, reframe anxiety, and rebuild your story. The decision is yours. If this journey resonated with you, like, comment, and share. It might be exactly what someone next to you needs to hear, and you'll be part of the change.